The disciples gathered as the morning sun illuminated the forest canopy, bathing the path in tranquil golden light. Walking ahead, the Buddha's presence radiated serenity, his footsteps silent yet resonant with purpose. Soon, they came upon a farmer plowing his field, sweat glistening on his brow under the midday heat. The farmer paused and gazed at the group, curiosity tinged with longing in his eyes. One disciple whispered to the Buddha, "Master, he seems content in his labor. How can I find such peace?" The Buddha's gaze fell on the disciple, his eyes filled with wisdom and patience. He approached the farmer, extending a kind gesture to join them for a moment. The farmer, hesitating, accepted the offer, grateful for the chance to rest. As the farmer sat, he sighed heavily, his weariness evident in his voice. "I toil from dawn till dusk. Yet I envy the freedom your disciples seem to enjoy," the farmer confessed. The disciple looked surprised, his earlier perception of the farmer's life now shattered. The Buddha spoke gently, "Peace is not born from what you see, but from how you perceive yourself." Turning to the disciple, the Buddha continued, "You see his labor and imagine simplicity. He sees your robes and imagines freedom. The mind, caught in comparison, blinds itself to reality and pursues illusions," the Buddha explained calmly. The farmer looked down, his thoughts reflective, as if weighing the truth of the Buddha's words. The disciple asked, "Master, how can one stop comparing and find peace in their own story?" The Buddha smiled, his expression serene, and held up a handful of soil from the farmer's field. "This soil," he said, "is neither more precious nor less than soil elsewhere. It simply exists as it is. When you accept yourself as you are, the weight of comparison dissolves into peace," the Buddha explained. The disciple nodded, his earlier envy now replaced with contemplation of the Buddha's wisdom. The farmer too reflected deeply, his shoulders seeming to ease from the invisible burdens of comparison. "Buddha, how can one learn to see the beauty within their own life?" The farmer asked softly. The Buddha gestured toward a blooming lotus by the field, its petals radiant with natural grace. "This lotus," he said, "does not compare itself to the trees or grasses. It blooms simply because it is. Your life, like this flower, holds beauty when unshadowed by the envy of another's path," the Buddha said. The farmer's eyes rested on the lotus, as though seeking to understand its essence. The disciples stood in silent awe, absorbing the lesson unfolding before them. The Buddha placed the soil back onto the earth, his gesture reverent and mindful. "As this soil nurtures life without condition, so must you nurture peace within your heart," the Buddha explained. The farmer bowed respectfully, gratitude glowing within his demeanor. "Master, your words bring clarity where there was confusion," the farmer said with sincerity. The Buddha nodded gently, his humility as profound as his wisdom. Turning to the disciple, the Buddha added, "Do not seek joy in another's story, but create joy within your own." The disciple lowered his head, a sense of humility and self-reflection settling in his heart. The group resumed their walk, the lesson lingering like the fragrance of the lotus by the field. The farmer watched them leave, a spark of peace kindled in his soul. The Buddha's words resonated in the hearts of all who heard them. Echoing beyond the moment, the disciple, deep in thought, approached the Buddha as they continued down the serene forest path. "Master, how does one cultivate contentment without being swayed by another's success?" the disciple asked earnestly. The Buddha paused and turned to a grove of trees, their branches interwoven yet distinct. "Observe these trees," the Buddha said. "They grow side by side, yet none diminish the strength of another. They do not compare their heights or branches. They simply grow in harmony," the Buddha explained. The disciple gazed at the grove, his mind expanding with the metaphor provided by his teacher. The Buddha continued, "Your growth is your own path. independent of the heights others achieve. Do not tether your peace to the victories or failures of another, the Buddha advised with patience. The disciple nodded, his spirit beginning to understand the depth of the teaching. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the disciples walked on, their footsteps echoing the lessons learned. Each step, though silent, reverberated with the truth imparted by the Buddha's words. The farmer, now alone, stood near the lotus, reflecting on the wisdom shared by the Buddha. The lotus, untouched by comparison, bloomed gracefully, inspiring the farmer to cultivate joy within his own life. And the disciples, too, carried the seed of peace, nurtured by the lesson of seeing beauty in one's own path. The Buddha's teaching, like ripples on a still pond, extended far beyond the moment, touching lives unseen. Through his wisdom, the Buddha illuminated the path away from comparison and toward enduring peace within the self. Another day, the Buddha sat under the shade of a banyan tree. His disciples gathered in quiet anticipation. The warm breeze carried the fragrance of nearby blossoms, mingling with the rustling leaves and birdsong of the serene grove. As the evening drew near, the Buddha began to speak, his voice calm and imbued with profound wisdom. He shared the story of a merchant who had recently approached him, burdened by sorrow despite his great wealth. The merchant, though prosperous, envied his rival's success, longing for possessions he did not have. The Buddha explained, his sorrow was not born from scarcity but from the illusion of lacking more than others. The disciples listened attentively, their curiosity stirred by the subtle depth of the Buddha's words. The Buddha continued, the merchant asked me why his riches brought him misery rather than peace. I asked him, do you measure your gold by its weight or by its comparison to another's? The Buddha said. He paused, his thoughts clouded by the realization that envy had transformed abundance into a heavy burden. The Buddha shared. The disciples exchanged glances, their understanding growing as the Buddha's lesson unfolded. Gold weighs nothing until we tie it to the expectations and achievements of others, the Buddha explained gently. Comparison is a chain, forged in the mind, that binds us to suffering without reason, the Buddha elaborated. The grove grew silent as the disciples pondered the parable of the merchant's misplaced longing. One disciple asked, Master, how does one free themselves from the chains of comparison? The Buddha gestured toward the river flowing nearby, its surface glimmering in the fading sunlight. He said, observe the river. It flows freely, unconcerned by the paths of other waters. Each stream is unique, yet its purpose is fulfilled by simply being, the Buddha continued thoughtfully. When you accept your own path without measuring its worth against another's, peace will find you, the Buddha said. The disciples gazed at the river, understanding that harmony lies in the acceptance of one's own existence. Master, is envy a natural part of the human condition? Asked another disciple. The Buddha's gaze fell on the disciple with compassion as he answered, envy is born from ignorance, not necessity. When we see only fragments of another's joy, we imagine completeness where there is none, the Buddha explained. The merchant envied wealth he could never possess, blind to the suffering it caused its owner, the Buddha said. The disciples reflected on the merchant's plight, recognizing the truth within the Buddha's words. How can one remain content amidst the successes of others? A disciple asked earnestly. The Buddha plucked a flower from nearby, holding it gently in his hand as he answered. This flower, he said, does not compare its bloom to the forest around it. It simply exists in beauty. Your life, like this flower, is complete without comparison, the Buddha said with serene conviction. The disciples observed the flower's simplicity, understanding its place within the greater tapestry of nature. The Buddha placed the flower back on the earth, his gesture mindful and reverent. As the earth nurtures this flower without condition, So must you nurture joy within yourself, the Buddha said. The disciples bowed in gratitude, their hearts swelling with the wisdom imparted by their teacher. The grove remained tranquil, the lessons echoing like whispers among the trees and river. Later that evening, the disciples gathered for meditation, their minds contemplative and centered. The Buddha, sitting silently, radiated peace that seemed to settle within the hearts of all present. A disciple approached and asked, "Master, how does one protect themselves from the comparisons imposed by others?" The Buddha gestured toward the moon, its luminous reflection shimmering upon the river's surface. "Observe the moon," he said. "It shines without measuring its glow against the stars above or the water below. Let your light shine freely, unshadowed by opinions of others or your own judgments," the Buddha advised. The disciple gazed at the moon, absorbing the quiet yet powerful metaphor provided by his teacher. The Buddha continued, "A mind free from comparison reflects peace like the still river reflects the moon." The disciples meditated upon the moonlit river, their spirits aligning with the truths shared by the Buddha. The night deepened, yet the teachings lingered, illuminating the path like the moon in its quiet brilliance. Through his wisdom, the Buddha's words guided his disciples toward freedom from comparison and the joy of acceptance. Another day, the Buddha led his disciples to a grove filled with blooming roses, their fragrance enhancing the calm morning air. The petals glistened with dew, their vibrant colors contrasting against the lush green of the surrounding forest. The disciples marveled at the roses, their beauty captivating and serene in its simplicity. The Buddha sat among the blooms, his presence radiating tranquility as the disciples settled around him. He plucked a single rose, holding it gently in his hand, its delicate petals untouched by haste. "Look upon this rose," the Buddha said, his voice calm and profound. "Does its beauty diminish because other roses bloom nearby?" The disciples pondered, observing the harmonious presence of the rose among its companions. "No, Master," one disciple replied. "Its beauty remains, undiminished by the blooms surrounding it." The Buddha nodded, his expression serene, as he continued, "So, too, is your essence among the lives around you. Comparison blinds us to our own nature, stealing joy and distorting the truth of our existence," the Buddha explained. The grove fell silent as the disciples reflected on the lesson unfolding before them. A disciple asked, "Master, how can one see their own beauty without the shadow of comparison clouding their sight?" The Buddha held the rose higher, its petals glowing softly in the morning light. "This rose does not envy its neighbors. It does not measure itself against their blossoms," the Buddha said. "It blooms because it is a rose, complete in its nature, content in its presence," he continued. The disciples gazed at the rose, understanding the Buddha's metaphor and its implications for their own lives. Another disciple asked, "Master, is it wrong to admire the beauty in others?" The Buddha's gaze softened as he answered, "To admire is to acknowledge without envy. To compare is to distort with desire. When we admire freely, we celebrate. When we compare, we seek to fill imagined gaps within ourselves," the Buddha said. The disciple nodded, their perspective expanding with the Buddha's wisdom. The Buddha placed the rose back into the earth, its presence now part of the grove's collective beauty. "Your life, like this rose, is complete without needing another's presence for validation," the Buddha explained gently. The disciples meditated upon the lesson, their hearts aligning with the truths shared by their teacher. Later, the disciples walked further into the forest, their minds contemplative and serene. They came upon a flowing stream, its waters glimmering in the sunlight like a quiet mirror. The Buddha gestured to the stream, its tranquil surface reflecting the canopy above. "Observe the stream," the Buddha said. "Does its flow falter because other streams join the journey to the river?" The disciples shook their heads, understanding the harmony within the stream's path. So, too, with your lives, the Buddha said. Flow without comparison, reflecting only the truth within yourself. The disciples gazed at the stream, absorbing the quiet metaphor and its wisdom. The Buddha knelt by the water, his presence mindful, as he let it run over his hand. This water nourishes life without demanding recognition or validation, the Buddha said. Thoughtfully, let your peace nourish your spirit without tethering it to comparison, the Buddha advised. The disciples bowed their heads in gratitude, their hearts resonating with the Buddha's words. The forest remained calm, the teachings echoing quietly within its timeless presence. One disciple asked, "Master, what happens when comparison arises within oneself despite understanding its harm?" The Buddha looked deeply into the disciple's eyes, his compassion unwavering. Comparison, like a shadow, appears when light casts upon the mind. Observe it without becoming entangled, the Buddha answered. Recognize its illusion and turn your focus inward, where the truth of your essence resides, the Buddha advised. The disciple reflected on the Buddha's response, their resolve to embrace inner peace growing. The sun rose higher, its rays illuminating the path taken by the Buddha and his disciples. Their footsteps echoed softly, their hearts lightened by the wisdom shared that morning. The grove, filled with blooming roses, remained untouched, a testament to the stillness of existence. The Buddha's words lingered, guiding his disciples toward the freedom found in accepting one's own nature. Through the silence of the forest and the wisdom of his teachings, the Buddha illuminated the path to enduring peace. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.